Ich sehe gerade, ich muss mir mal...
I see that I need to buy new clothes. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to this expert panel discussion on European social policy shaping the digital decade in business and employment. And the floor is open. Well, I don't know if this is actually the right frame. I would like to welcome those who are watching from behind the screens. We're not used to that anymore. During COVID, we did almost only participate through the screen, but now it's not on a daily basis. However, we have just realized today again that many of you, I've met them online, and many of you this way. Well, I haven't seen you live before. But before going further, I would like to hand over to Markus Becker for his welcome speech.
Uwe, das ist das.
Ja, meine sehr geehrten
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted to be able to welcome you in the name of our Minister for European and Federal Affairs to this hybrid event shaping the digital decade in business and employment in our westernmost part of our region of Hessen in Brussels. And in line with the big topics that are digitalization and others, I am also going to talk to you in a hybrid manner, thus virtually. But I'm with you, totally with you in Brussels. I'm looking forward to this expert panel discussion, a topic that is important to us all. We are at the very start of a huge transformation. The two 4Ds, digitization on the one hand and decarbonization on the other hand, are representing it. And both need to be brought together in the framework of the Green Deal. And this is not just bringing about big changes and challenges for Europe. Digitization must be shaped, and Hessen, as so often, is a pioneer. 5 years ago, we have already named a minister for digital strategy and development and have thus given a priority to digitization in Hessen. And digitization offensive has come a long way. At the same time, we all need to take care of decarbonization as well, which means taking care of our environment and climate change, climate protection. We can only do this in a successful manner if we take people on board. Digitization brings about topics such as the Internet of Things, robotics, just as well as question of artificial intelligence. This means that the business environment is going to be reshaped. If we look at decarbonization and the Green Deal, in many areas there will be changes in the way of living and working. In all cases, together with people in business, there where we want to strengthen small and medium-sized enterprises, we want to make them able to stay competitive and also able of adapting to new forms of working. Of course, the interests of workers and employees are important as well. This is a task where we need to co-shape things together. Acceptancy within the public also as far as the societal impact of decarbonization is concerned will only be successful if we work together and if we create a framework that may help us in this way. I am very grateful to you, Mr. Meyer, and your organization for the support you have given to us. And if we look back at the first expert panel discussion for social policy on a European level in 2008 here in this house, then we can see that the topics that were anti-discrimination, European Works Councils, that this has not changed, and it is showing us how up-to-date and priority-oriented we are here. In 2008 as well, this was in the summer, we had Max Uebe. He was a member of the cabinet of the Social Commissioner, and we have dealt with such topics. This time as well, it will be very interesting to hear about your ideas, about your objectives, and the discussion that will come about. I'm looking forward to this event, and I'm wishing you every success. I think that together we are able to shape digitization and decarbonization transformation in a successful manner. A warm welcome to you from our State Chancellery in Hessen.
Vielen Dank, Herr Becker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Becker. I have actually spoken of Markus Becker from the Spiegel, but in actual fact, of course, this was Mr. Uwe Becker. Sorry for this. I only wanted to clarify it. I would like to hand over to Dirk Meyer. Prior to him taking the floor, he's the Chief Executive Officer of HessenChemie Employees Association ever since 2016. Ever since 2001, he was also in the federal organization and in charge of the topics we're dealing with today. He also worked for the Deutsche Bahn prior to that. You have the floor, Mr. Meyer.
Guten Tag.
A warm welcome also on my behalf. You are in a good mood today. I'm not talking about the German Bahn, the German railway station, because of course, a railway agency, we have another topic which is more important here today. You have spoken about transformation, and I would like, well, prior to going into the topic of digitization, I would like to look at the status quo in the chemical and pharmaceutical industry in Hessen and in Germany overall. To give you an overview of this, in our Employees Association, we have 320 businesses that group together from chemical industry, pharmaceutics, from PVC and infrastructural service providers. So it's a really broad spectrum of companies. 110,000 employees are working there, and they are all in a huge transformation phases. There's a huge change about, because in the chemical industry we do have the we were given the task of changing towards digitization and at the same time remain competitive in the market. This is a huge task, and this is why transformation is the key word, as our Minister of State mentioned today, Secretary of State. One thing that all have in common is digitization next to decarbonization as the result of a broad study that chemical employers have implemented recently, showing different scenarios. There's a positive scenario that is going forward, which will bring also about positive effects for employment. But this means that we, in fact, set and create a good framework that allows us to be sustainable and climate neutral and remain competitive. There's another scenario which we call a status quo scenario or a standstill scenario. The conditions are not bad. We do take steps forward, but without big success. I think that this is a rather defensive scenario in which we also have negative effects on employment. And then we have a scenario which is actually the true standstill scenario, where the framework conditions for our industry are negative, challenges that we are not able to tackle in a successful manner. And this would mean that by the end of the decade 2030, we might even have red numbers as far as employment is concerned. Of course, we would like to see a successful way forward, but of course this is not something we can control, because there are two things that are important. On one hand, we need to take the right decisions in terms of management in the single businesses, but on the other hand, we need a good framework condition. Businesses must be able to invest in new climate neutral technologies. We also need digitization, continued digitization within the businesses to develop other models, other business models, be more efficient. And the third factor for success, which I would like to mention now, is the people working in the companies, which is the competences that we have or that we must have in place in order to be able to go forward. And this as well is a huge task that companies are already tackling today. Big task, a big need of investment as well. But at the same time, what about the situation, the current situation in the chemical industry? It's a bad status quo. If you look at Germany, there is a big breakdown in production because of structural cost positions in energy prices that are rising. Of course, our prices always were higher than, for example, in the United States or in the Asian countries. However, after the Russian-Ukrainian war, we have structural problems that will be lasting. In fact, when we look at electricity prices, we have a factor 3 or 4 more than the United States, and this will be lasting. This also led to closing down several production sites because we are not competitive enough anymore. In production numbers this year, 2023, in classical chemistry, we were at minus 18%. Last year, they were already minus 6%. So it's not the best possible status quo in order to be successful in transformation. Because, of course, we need to invest in order to do it. We need money. You need to be able to make money, and this is where it's difficult for us. Pharmaceutical is much more successful, much more stable. The numbers are in an upward trend, in a slight upward trend. What might be helping us? Well, that is what we're going to discuss today. Digitization, which provides a lot of opportunities, also tasks. Artificial intelligence will bring about new potential, new possibilities in our industry as well. It will also be one of the topics discussed today. And this is where I would like to close. I'm looking forward to the debate today, and I thank you already for your attention.
Kurz und knackig, dann
Wonderful, thank you very much. Mr. Uwe, I would like to ask you to come here. Some housekeeping rules, and afterwards we're going to start our discussion. Mr. Meyer said already we are collecting questions and we are holding space for a question and answer session at the end. Of course, if you have a question before, just let us know. This is also why I'm looking at the cameras further back. You can also put in questions via email. I would like to read out the address streamline at LV and then minus Brussels in German .hessen.de. You should be able to see the number of your screen that you can also use, both the address and the number. I would like to present Mr. Uebe, head of unit in Future of Work and Youth Employment in our Directorate-General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion within the European Commission. I think you've been there for ever since 2015, is that correct? You're not sure yourself, I think? Yes, that is correct. It's not perfect. We've had many different dossiers. Well, I'm not saying that you are bored there. This was not my intention. But ever since 2012, then you have been busy within the European Director-General. Before you've been working for the cabinet of Andor, Spiedner, which in fact were surprisingly enough in charge of employment and social affairs. So you are a true expert in this sense. And you're also from the same region, from Hessen. And this is positive because, well, I would also like to say that there's a pupils group today from UNA. Is this correct? Oh, I'm sorry. You're a group of adults. I'm surprised to hear that. Anyway, my point, well, was not to say that there's a group of pupils, but rather the origin, because my father is from UNA. And I actually worked there for an internship as well when I was younger. So this is actually part of my introduction remarks. Mr. Uwe said that because of the fact that he has been working in this area for such a long time, he's going to talk about employment as such. This was mentioned by him in our pre-meeting. And this is why I would like to hand over to Mr. Meyer first. Fittingly enough, the European Commission recently proposed a interim report on the digital decade, which aims at reaching goals by 2030 and make it a pioneer in digitization. There was a first interim report, and this shows the status quo. We're also, as far as Germany is concerned, I was surprised about the good results of Germany. Mr. Meyer, how do you see Germany in terms of digitization with a look not only at 2030, but also the coming years. I looked at the interim report. What I thought was positive is that there are concrete numbers. There are actually concrete numbers and factors to look at the aims and objectives. I see that we are, I would say, in a good medium field. It's not very ambitious, but if we detail it more, the digital decade covers several dimensions. There's the topic of infrastructure on the one hand, and in Germany, as far as mobile phone is concerned, we're quite good. As far as the fiberglass connection is concerned, we are really lagging behind. I think you can check this also at home and see how most households are linked to internet right now. And as far as competences are concerned, we are on a good way in terms of universities and other secondary education. However, we have too little people coming out from these. There is more room for maneuver. And if you look at companies, they have realized that digitization and digital technologies bring about potential. However, we need to go further in depth in order to be able to make good use of them. And in the area of digital service providers in public administration and public services, I see that we are really lagging behind. We might all have seen what happened with the online accessibility law. The true aim was actually taken away, which does not remove the task. So in comparison with other countries, we're actually ranking in the middle of our European partners. If I look to the left and to the right on the globe, however, there are other economic areas that are moving faster, moving in a more efficient manner, and this is where we should look to Europe as a whole and Germany as well. Mr. Uebe, as a Hessian, not just as an expert, what do you see when you look from Brussels back to Germany in terms of digitization? I always have the impression that when I look from our Brussels perspective, for example, electronic data, patient information, etc., that Germany is not quite in the middle area. This is why I was surprised by the positive outcome of this first analysis in the interim report. And what about you? What do you think about this? Not just as an expert from the European Commission, of course.
Yeah, I got you. Welcome to all of you. Honestly, I feel the same as you do. Of course, I have a lot to do in Germany, a lot of things to request on, and sometimes quite surprising how little progress we've made in the area of digitization, also administration, when compared to Belgium, for example. I think Belgium is quite a few steps ahead, I have to say. And of course, I read the interim report and I printed it out. There are some annexes and you can find all the data of the member states, and that's the area that we are responsible for. Digital skills, here we are below average, and we want to be a leading country within the economics, and it is hard to defend this lagging. Of course, I do not want to start with the German railways because you're quite affected if you start from Strasbourg via Paris to Brussels, because the train is starting in Germany and you're very often very much affected. And I don't know where we see the link to digitization here. In that context, I have a nice little story to tell. When I came to Brussels quite some time ago, I do not want to mention the year, and At the time, there was just a book taken out of a shelf, and we just glued my photo in there, and that was just registered. But enough with the bashing of Germany now. So we have already talked about education. What can we do? What does Germany have to do? First of all, I'd like to pass the question to you, Mr. Meyer, before we go on with this very short, because it is quite obvious that we have a problem in that area. This is no news to us. That's right. Of course, there is there's no issue realizing the issue. It's rather a problem of implementation. We really see where we have the biggest issue. So, for example, we talk about professional training, and we try to modernize it and to adapt this to the requirements in the digital era. The most important profession in our area is the so-called chemical operator. But of course, installations are getting ever more digital. You need to maintain it. There are smart devices which can immediately perform an analysis, but people need to be able to handle it. And within the vocational training, together with social partners, we have been picking up digitization and connected productions. So this has been implemented so as to make sure that the people learning this new profession know how this new world is actually working. So they have some experience, and this is quite important to learn by doing. But at the same time, we have a lot of companies offering reskilling and further education to make it in a systematic. So we have a little bit of AI, we have a little bit of this and that, and we now have started a training with one company and the IHK to create a sort of curriculum where the industry can act themselves. We are going in and we invest, but the issue is rather with the schools. Here we are still lacking skilled teachers, so very often we need to have some content. Here we're not talking about using a smartphone and just sliding left and right, but I need to understand what's behind it. I need to have these skills to be able to use them and to perform accordingly. So we need to have an education offensive also with regards to the digital skills, but on the other hand, maybe in primary schools we should prohibit the use of smartphones, because the theory behind it is that people should only use it as of a certain age. So let's take this to a European level. Is this a German-specific problem, or is this something that we see everywhere in the European Union, that the necessary IT or ICT experts are not available, and that there's already a lack at school level? So that people do not have the necessary conditions to be trained accordingly. I think all member states try to improve the situation, because without these skills, it just won't work anymore. The best AI won't be of any help if you cannot use it. And we're not talking about people developing AI in the future, so that's not even a subject here. So all the member states try to improve the transmission of basic skills, but there are significant differences. I do not want to name and shame here, but please do, because we're not talking about a ranking, but very often when talking about the STEM fields in Eastern Europe, it is quite difficult to get a grasp. So very often I was surprised because I went to Bulgaria a couple of years ago, and that's what people explained. We want to get ahead. We have a lot of people being trained in IT, and how many people are actually residing in Bulgaria. And if you look at the basic digital scale, we see Bulgaria and Romania at the very bottom of the list with 30%, more or less. of people with these skills. Other countries have 80% of people having these basic skills, so there's quite a range. So there's a lot of effort on all different levels, also in the schools, to improve the current situation. On a European scale, there is also quite some money, some funding available. And now with the European Year of Skills that has been announced by the President exactly 1 year ago, that was the State of the Union speech in 2022. I think there was also a contribution here, and we see this on the labor market, that the interest of the member countries is quite huge, because we have other initiatives where the member states remain more cautious. But here we see quite a lot of interest, because people do realize there is a challenge and that there's competition with other economic forces on this planet. In what respect, Mr. Meyer? A good example to be able to learn from others. Yeah, also to have an exchange, to share good ideas, to request European funding. I do not know the numbers by heart, but Germany also spent quite some billions on the digitization. I think more than 50% has to say, out of 26 billion, almost half. So this is quite a chunk, actually. And yeah, the question remains, what about the speed? Because time is fleeting, and technological developments are also increasingly fast. So we have to make sure that we are not left behind, but there are some additional challenges awaiting. As you've said before, I have dealt for quite some time with youth employment, and if you have a certain background, some young people just can't be reached. And as always, there is a connection between different aspects. As for the Netherlands, how do they manage? What do they do differently so that they are so far ahead? I cannot really tell you. That's a pity. That would have been quite enlightening. Well, Mr. Meyer, in that respect, is there maybe some German complacency at play here? Our labor market is still quite well positioned. When now talking a lot about this apparently sick man, but if we look at the data, we still have quite some low numbers in the employment world, so that people think, okay, we can just move on just as we've done until now. Maybe the pressure is not enough. I fear that this could indeed play a role, because there is a skilled labor shortage. We have low unemployment numbers and so on, but we see some changes right now. So this is a false sense of security, because the successes of the past will not guarantee my prosperity for the future. So I need to react accordingly. The companies understood this. We need to redefine ourselves. We need to reshape our companies to be able to compete. So it is interesting to see, where am I on the list of digital performances, and I need to show that. So I need to fix the achievement of goals, and I need to put numbers to it. I need to compare myself to other member states. Maybe we are a little bit too complacent, but one thing needs to be noted. This is quite surprising to me as well. I had a read of that. Until now, we did not manage, and we're not talking just about the national scale, but it is a general phenomenon that with IT investments we had an increase in production and productivity, because for quite some years we saw a drop in productivity despite the investment in IT and so on. And I think you all see that, and if you're responsible for IT, you know that of course we have quite some renewals, a lot of turnover. Before we had a machine that we bought and that just kept running for 10 years without any changes, and now we need to readapt, reprogram, and this costs a lot of money without really seeing any progress or real effects and productivity effects. And this is a thought that we need to follow. We need to become more effective, more efficient, and we need to see the scaling effects of digitization. This is quite interesting indeed, because in the US it's quite the opposite, if I remember the numbers correctly. Why is that? Because in the end they also have to install the updates and so on. I did not really go into the nitty-gritty of the matter, but an industrial comparison with the US won't lead to different results, but our business models are different. Amazon and Google and so on, they have a completely different business. Of course, what's working here as well is that our industrial companies could develop new business models. They had their own sale platforms that they developed. So they are no longer dependent of the other platforms. So a completely new world here, a completely new way to the customer. So quite a success. But for the industry, for the production and so on, there is still this task remaining to create a positive effect. I would like to add a thought about the importance of people, of skills and competencies. Here we're talking about investments as well. No one will continue investing if there are no people who are able to work in a production line for chips, for example. So there's quite some worry about that. And then there's this skilled labor shortage. Could be an issue that becomes quite difficult. So there is a burden to investment because we do not have the skilled labor that is needed. We're not there yet. But if you look at the demographic change, for example, the skilled worker issues as a whole, and just the fact that we are lacking certain skills, there are some numbers that I find quite frightening. If 40% of companies say that they can't find the people with the necessary digital skills, I think that's quite a lot. I do not want to create unnecessary drama, but how much time is left if we are talking about the digital decade with the objective of 2030? But very often the economic world says if we're talking about investment in new decision also for decarbonization, or be it batteries or digitization. So we need some kind of investment decisions in the next 3 to 5 years, because beyond that it's just too late. So we do not have the time to wait until 2030. I cannot give you any concrete numbers, but the faster the better. I think a lot of people would agree with me on that. But on the other hand, when talking about education, schools, these are reforms that take quite a while, and also it takes a while to feel the effects. So we should really go full speed here. How frustrating is it for you from the institutional point of view? Because a lot of these subjects have been mentioned before. There's no real obligation. No one say, okay, you have to do this and that. You can just hint and say, okay, that is the way to go. This is maybe the way forward. It's quite difficult, no? Yeah, indeed. But as I said before, we see quite some interest that was sparked. Things are a bit different now. Follow-up questions, new ideas, new funding, political impulses. So I do not want to complain about that. But you still have the impression that the issue and the danger that we find ourselves in has gotten to the member states. They realize that. Yes, I think so, indeed. And it's not just about skills. It's also about shaping the digitization as a whole. Do we need a new legal framework? And here again, there's quite some interest. The issue is a complex one. It cannot be easily poured into a legal framework, so that we need input from Brussels. A lot of people had been thinking about it, and their thoughts are really welcome. If so many companies say that they can't find the digital skills, the question is, what can the companies do on their own? Because you can always complain, but maybe you need to take the untrained people and reskill them. Maybe I'll answer that in a second. I'd like to come back to the previous point. The question was, when do we start? Shouldn't we move faster? Of course, we need to move fast. We need to get ahead, because we need to make sure that we don't back down. It's all too difficult. We're too slow, so I drop everything. No. Quite the opposite. We need to get ahead. We need to start, and we need to free the growth capacities. We do have skilled people. We have good people. We have excellent cooperation with well-established industries that take the startups on board and they move forward with the AI. But sometimes, yeah, we're slowed down. Sometimes it's too complicated. We're just too slow when talking about approvals and so on. It's not necessarily about the money. There is a pact for digitization that we had in schools, but the money was not even demanded because there was just no plan behind it. So we need to free these forces for growth, and maybe this is now up to the big decision makers to do it top down. We do not see the effect, but we need this effect. We have a lot of points where we can attack. And now, getting back to the skilled labor, I completely agree with you, because this was a huge asset for Germany and Europe. We have a great basis for skilled labors, but we've seen this for a couple of years already. We're getting ever so old, and we do not see that the capacities have improved by a lot over the last years. So we need to say, we need to put even more effort into it. So if we do not have young people with the necessary skills, we need to train the young people that do not necessarily have all the required capacities. We need to reskill them, and that's why training, continuous education needs to be fostered, and we have a market economy. And if there is a need, usually there's someone developing an answer and creating an offer. And I'm quite positive that we will manage, but we need to have a close look at the burdens, at everything that is stopping us. Even if it's grinding and difficult, we need to get rid of the points that are disturbing. Let's just move from Brussels to Berlin. You said before there needs to be someone in charge. We have a minister for digitization in Germany. Are they just not doing their job?
Yeah, but it's a question of diplomacy. The one is going to the cultural ministry and back, and the same is happening with the ministry dealing with scientific affairs, and then you have the state secretary. So in order to be able to bundle this, to take it together and bring it together, which is quite a good approach, it's a really complex mechanism. You have to look at the single responsibilities. Some things are being done by the highest levels only, and it's a question of organizing it. You need to be clear about it. Everybody needs to be on the same page. For example, as far as schools are concerned, there's one who is in charge of the logistics, the building, and everything that happens in place. Another ministry is in charge of the teaching personnel, And then in the end, you realize that there's nobody who is dealing with updating, for example. And these are very simple things, but where things are blocked. It's a question of organizing things, and in the very concrete places where things are blocked, and you need to identify these and smoothen things out. So they're very concrete examples where you need to be very concrete also in tackling them. You had a beautiful Freudian slip in German in terms of procedure. Very difficult for me to translate it, but it was very interesting. I would like to use it one day. However, as far as what you said is exactly what it's about, is complexity. So if we go from schools to adults, we have known for years that further training, lifelong learning, adult training, well, do you think that things are happening on that level? Is something moving forward? I'm under the impression that in the meantime, everybody, even if I look at my own parents who are beyond 80, they know how to deal with a mobile phone. However, that doesn't mean that they know something about IT. Do you think that up till the 60s, we need to be sure that people know how to do this if we want to stay competitive? Yes, definitely. Also, in front of the backdrop of a lack of experts, we just cannot allow people to go to retire that early. We need to make sure that people stay in the employment market. Many of my colleagues are dealing with lifelong learning, adult training, further training, but these are topics that have been there for the past 20, 25 years. They have been priorities for all the time that I was there as well. So I don't think it's new. Maybe in these past years it was got a little bit more intense in this area. However, further training, reskilling, upskilling, as we call it, they will be ever more important in the future. I think this is for sure. What is important is also that people should not be afraid of such developments, because that would not serve the purpose. Many, we can also see it here, are painting dark pictures on the wall. That doesn't serve us. In the end, it's not about everybody being able to program artificial intelligence. I think we need to have basic knowledge and not be afraid of doing just a little bit more of typing in your PIN code in your mobile phone. Yes, it's about basic digital skills, as we call it. Germany lags behind. I think we're at 49%, which means that we definitely should do more in that area. Is it also a question of mentality? And that maybe there is a certain fact of being afraid of what you don't know. And is this something that might be typical for Germans? Sorry for phrasing it this way. Well, I think it's a dangerous way of phrasing it. However, yes, I do think that there are certain nations that might have more affinity with technical equipment than others. And Germany might not be the pioneer in this area. In Germany, we also have the specific problem of data protection, which plays a very important role in all these questions and all these topics. Historically, it can be explained, but it's always the case that certain interlocutors from other countries do not quite understand why Germans do not do certain things. For example, do not share certain data, etc. There are definitely differences. Now, if we share data with Facebook and others, I think Germany doesn't have a problem, or maybe not everybody, but the biggest part of Germans don't seem to have a problem. You also talked about people beyond 50, 60, well, lifelong learning. In Germany, did we set the right framework? Because in the report, I realized at least that it is said that other models of employment, other business models are to be looked at. Also, how can we make sure we have enough people for digitization, etc. It's a very huge topic. In what way can we co-shape, participate in shaping this? What can we do to make sure that we are having enough experts? It's about setting the right framework conditions, also as far as childcare facilities for the care of elderly, etc., are concerned. It's a question of wanting to attract experts from beyond Europe as well for our own internal job markets. The Commission is going to present a talent pool in a few weeks, which is already being discussed in Germany. At the same time, my commissioner holds on tight to one of his priorities. For people in Europe, for unemployed within Europe, we're talking about 8 million young needs from not in employment, education and training, as we call them, that we should not forget about them. Reskilling, upskilling, everything that was mentioned in this area would make us fit for the future, and a lot needs to happen in this area, but at the same time. And what about migration, immigration in the sense, which is also a question that has been incentivized with the Blue Card Initiative and others. Mr. Scholz and many other ministers are traveling, trying to find experts, trying to find, in the hospitals of Brazil or other countries, trying to interest people for coming to Germany. Immigration is certainly one of a very important topic. We're talking about a controlled, positive immigration of experts. We need to look into the history as well, and I think that on a legal level there has been a framework that has been set that is quite positive. However, it's also a question of implementation now. We do need operational excellence that should start in the German embassies abroad, whether I get a meeting, whether I get a visa, etc. And it's also a question of digitization, such processes. We haven't done this so far. We are still lagging behind and far from a place where we have become an attractive country for migrants, for skilled migrants. It's not just a question of winning people, of convincing them to come, but we also need to be able to integrate these families, make them feel welcome. And this is a huge task. I do believe that is a partial reply in the area, well, within all these big tasks that we are finding ourselves confronting. Just this question of fear. I don't actually think people are afraid. I would like to look at survey results. We, in our case, have negotiations with trade unions, and one of these trade unions asked their own members, and the result always was, well, no, we're not afraid of digitization. We just want to know where the trip is taking us to, and we want to be supported as far as changes are concerned. Well, in an innovative area as ours, change and transformation is our daily reality. So people are on board. They can do it. I don't think they're afraid, but we need to be able to discuss things. This is what we're also doing in December. We have a common workshop with works councils and trade unions where we are talking about the impact of artificial intelligence applications. People are wondering whether we are too defensive, whether we are too stringent in terms of data protection. If this is the case, well, it's not about letting go of things. It's about understanding people's fears and doing them the right way. I think there are big opportunities, especially for our industry, as far as applications are concerned, where we can open whole new worlds for us that make people benefit from them. Just an example, in pharmaceutics, we have the fact of trying to find the molecules for vaccines, and scientists need to find the exact molecule. So far, this has been done only in a laboratory by hand. in artificial intelligence applications, you actually can create virtual models that virtually create new molecules, and where the algorithm tells you if there's a high potential, a high possibility for this to be successful, and then only it is going to be developed in a laboratory. And this opens new worlds to us, and people need to know what to do about this, how to deal with it. Back to the fear of people. Of course, I'm happy to hear that employees, workers on your side don't seem to be afraid, but there's a whole series of studies that do see things differently. A very recent study of the OECD countries shows that employees see the positive opportunities provided by artificial intelligence, that certain jobs that people don't do or do very reluctantly could be taken over by artificial intelligence, but they are afraid of the loss of workplaces or that their salaries could be reduced. So this concerns artificial intelligence in particular, and not digitization as such, right? Yes, does concern artificial intelligence. But as we do expect that millions of workplaces are being lost in Europe over the coming years, however, on the other side, we do expect others to be created, but the numbers are quite huge. And they do signify a huge transformation, shift. Elope in Germany has also published a report which indicates that 5% of employees or more in the high-income countries could actually be impacted by automation in these coming years, which means a big disruption on the employment market, on the job market. Of course, we need to accompany this. We need to shape this transformation to make sure that not too many people will be negatively affected by this. I think it was Sam Ortman who recently said that the entire program of all the countries, talking about programming is not useful anymore because it's all about artificial intelligence in the future. Of course, he's provoking people. He does know with what fears he is talking to. But in this context, it's quite fitting. Prior to being too dystopic, do you have any questions on your side? We are close to the finishing line here. Is there a microphone in the room? We definitely need to make sure we always talk into the microphone so that people online at home can also hear you. Otherwise, not everybody is able to follow. Please say who you are and put your questions. Stefan Sommers. I am not from Unna, but from Schleswig-Holstein. It's a very interesting discussion. Wonderful to listen to you. Mr. Meyer, you were close to what I thought early on. The schools are being fitted by the organizations in charge of them. I wouldn't want to talk about this in detail, but I would like to say, what can we do, or ask what can we do in order to make sure that young people are being accompanied in terms of digitization. I'm from the municipal level. We have a training school. You talked about the digital pact. Money has been reduced. I think our school, however, is well fit, well furbished, well, we do have the material equipment, but there's there's nothing to accompany it. Our numbers are growing, the classes are bigger and bigger. This is not a critical voice against migration. It's just saying that we need more teachers because we have too many pupils. We need more qualified teaching personnel and less of all the rest, which is being organized for less money. The country of poets and thinkers that is in the past. I really think we need to do more to offer possibilities to the young people to be able to deal with digital things in an effective manner. Schleswig-Holstein, I think it's the same in Hessen, is in a position where we have too little money. We need teachers. Ms. Prina is very, very discreet in this area. Is there someone who would like to reply to that? Or can we leave it at that? This plaidoyer for teachers, for teaching personnel. I don't think anybody would say the contrary.
Dankeschön. Stefan Grahn vom Europäischen Gewerkschaftsbund.
European Trade Union Association. Maybe to come back to the teachers' question. Maybe it's also a financial issues. We had too many savings, and it's a consequence of this so-called break-even black zero, so that we are not really future-proofed in Germany. Also, when it comes to the training of the teachers and so on. But I wanted to ask a question with respect to AI. You said that employees do not have to be afraid of it. But you need to make a difference between AI that is used in production and AI that is, for example, used in human resources, where you have an effect of the labor relations and also data protection and so on. So we need to make a difference here. And therefore, my question to the panel, whether you agree with that statement, that for sure we need to have some kind of regulation on a European scale if there is AI being used when it affects the labor relationship between employees and employers. Yes, this is a subject that I would gladly like to comment upon. I mentioned digitization in a more strict aspect before. Of course, here it is completely new, and it is a basic change. It affects the basis of things, and that's why we need to enter into a dialogue with the employers, with the trade unions, because we need to redefine ourselves. Of course, we cannot define these different situations ahead of time. We should not create doomsday here. Also skill shift is being directed into IT. Well, do we need some guidelines, some rails? Here the AI Act is an important point, but of course we have to have a value-based assessment in Europe without, and that's very important, without blocking us from being competitive. We need to shape in such a way that we can keep up with other economic areas on a global scale. Of course, I'm not an expert. We need to define the standards, the risks assessment, but we need to define the different areas and guidelines so that we do not create another GDPR where we have no possibility to do anything without the consent and so on. So it's maybe a bit extreme. We need to have a reasonable regulation so that you can get some kind of orientation, still being able to do some successful business also for society, because there is a huge societal potential, because I just hinted at the health aspects. Very briefly from my side, we've mentioned it before. Of course, this is not enough to regulate very specific labor aspects. I think some people are already preparing themselves for the next 5 years, and I think the president herself said already in May in Berlin, I think, that from her point of view, this regulation of jobs is something to be discussed, and there's quite a lot going on, and so it's not really unrealistic to see some new approaches here on a European side. Sorry, I just threw my a pen around. Any other questions? I see here to the right side one last question because we're approaching 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Parliament stuff. So it's more a common brainstorming. So maybe my ideas are really wrong. It's based mainly on my experience. I started to code when I was 10 because I made some training at school and so on. I think what we miss is like we have at school training. There is more and more digital training, but we need to understand also the psychology of people. So people not always, if you train, they are willing to be interested in the training. You need to give some carrot. We need more contests. We need more hours. Especially young people, they like this kind of thing. They like to be challenged. They like to be the first or maybe the second. And this we don't do enough. That's my point of view. And secondly is the solidarity between the generations. Also there, I think that we need to be more creative. We need to have some programs that, for example, finance this. Can be that, for example, young people, they go to help the old people based on a scheme where partially mainly is financed by the public, but partially is financed also by the mature and old people who take this kind of service, because that creates a market. If you don't perform well, even I give you only €1 or €2 per hour, next time I don't choose you, I choose someone else. If we only do that 100% financed by public, I don't care, because anyway it's not my money. So I think that all this kind of creativeness in supporting these activities is needed. At the moment, we try to provide infrastructure in terms of training, service, but maybe we are missing a bit this element of creativeness in supporting this. Thanks.
Herr Uebe, mehr Kreativität, mehr Zuckerbrot.
Mr. Uwe, more creativity, more incentives. What about this? I'm not an education expert, also creativity. I agree with you. How do we get there? I cannot really tell. There was another aspect, maybe, that went through my head when listening to you. This is the so-called digital divide on a European scale. So we should try to avoid that. That we have countries or regions, or also the splits between countryside and cities, where you have all the qualified geeks sitting in small clusters, and the rest of the country, of the region, or of the continent is left behind in the digital world. So this is something that we try to attack as well. Would you like to add something, Mr. Meyer? I think the statement is correct. We need to try to create the right incentives, to create some motivations, a kind of carrot, be it on a financial scale or a ranking to evaluate competition, to have something that is achieved is something good. We need to say that again. It is a good thing to create new paths. This is also something we should take on board, that we should implement in the digital data. We have to have creativity, and we need to have the will. We need to have the performance, and we need to follow the path. Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer, for these final words that I wanted to hear from you. There is not that much to add here, and it is not as negative as the last 10 minutes that have been discussed here. So thank you very much for coming here, also for joining us online at your screen. Thank you for coming, and tomorrow we will have the next event here at 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Luxembourg has voted, so tomorrow 1 p.m. come in. Please join us tomorrow here, and of course, for those who are here, you're welcome to get some cake and coffee outside, and for those at home, well, you have to take care of yourself. Thank you very much.